If you type into Google the words "a Christmas promise," various different novels and different films come up as the top results. Now, I don't know anything about these novels. I don't know anything about these films. They may or may not be good. They may or may not make an impression upon those who read them and watch them. But I want to talk to you today about a Christmas promise that certainly is good and that changes lives for the better when people understand it and believe it. It's the promise found in Isaiah chapter 9 and verse 6 that was read to us earlier. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. This is a promise that Jesus Christ, God's Son, would be born into the world. It's a promise that was made some 700 years before he was born. And it's a promise that God has kept. And it's a promise that we need to take to heart. And this morning we're going to look at just the first part of this promise. To us a child is born. To us a son is given. First thing to notice then is that a child is born. We have here the promise of the birth of a child. And of all the children to have been born into the world, the focus of this promise is upon one child in particular. And this is not the first promise made about this child. In the book of Isaiah, a couple of chapters earlier, in chapter 7 and verse 14, we read that the virgin will be with child and will give birth to a son and will call him Emmanuel. So this is the promise of a child born to a virgin, and straight away that tells us that there's something very special about this child that is born. But that being said, there's something very special about this child, and we'll come on to that. In many ways, this child was like other children. Though he was conceived by the work of God in the womb of a virgin, Mary's pregnancy and then the birth, as far as we know, followed then the normal pattern. When he was born, his mother wrapped him in cloths and placed him in a manger. His mother cared for him and provided for him. He grew up, he ate, he slept, he worked, he played. In many ways, he was like other children. But though in many ways he was like other children, he was also different to other children. And he was different to other children in that this child, Jesus Christ, never once sinned. He never did anything wrong. The carol, Once in Royal David City, includes the line, and through all his wondrous childhood, he would honour and obey. This child honoured and obeyed, always honoured and obeyed his earthly parents. He never spoke out of turn to Mary and Joseph. He never lied to them. He never disobeyed them. But not only did he always honour and obey his earthly parents, but he always honoured and obeyed God, his heavenly Father. And this continued through his teenage years and into his adult years. And God the Father once spoke directly from heaven and said of him, "This is my son whom I love. With him I am well pleased." And it's because this child who grew into a man, Jesus Christ, because he never once sinned, that he's able to save people who have sinned, people like us. And this child then that was born, he grew in his understanding of his work. He'd been given the great work of saving people from sin, saving people from the judgment that sin deserves. And as he grew up, he'd have read the scriptures, the Old Testament part of the Bible. He'd have read passages like Psalm 22 and Isaiah chapter 53 that speak of how people are saved by somebody else dying for sin in their place. And as he read and studied such passages, this child grew in his understanding of what he had to do, and knowing what lay ahead, knowing the suffering that lay ahead of him. Still he honored and obeyed his father. Still he went to the cross and died in the place of others. A child is born. But then notice the words that follow that. A child is born and a son is given. A son is given. Now, all children are sons and daughters, but this child was a son in a special way. This child is the Son of God. This was explained to Mary before he was born, when the angel Gabriel told Mary that she was to give birth to a son. We're told in Luke chapter 1 and verse 34, Mary asked, "How will this be, since I'm a virgin?" And the angel answered, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Most High will overshadow you. So the Holy One to be born will be called the Son of God." And that's the wonder of this Christmas promise. That's the wonder of the Christmas message, that God the Son, without ceasing to be God, became a man, was born into the world as a baby. The Word became flesh. Again, many of the carols we sing speak of the wonder of this. We've just sung the words, "Lo, within a manger lies he who built the starry skies." A son is given. But why? Why did the Son do that? Why did God the Son come into the world as a man? Why was God the Son born as a baby? Well, the answer's found in these words. To us a son is given. This child is the gift of God. God promised to give this gift, and he's now given it. Now, for many people, Christmas is a time of giving and receiving gifts. And all kinds of gifts are given and received, big and small, expensive, not so expensive. Some of you may think back to certain gifts you've received at different times that were particularly special, more special than other gifts, perhaps because of who gave it, or the reason they gave it, or the time that they gave it. But the gift we read of here is the gift of gifts. Later in the Bible, this gift is described as God's indescribable gift. We don't have the words to explain how great this gift is. To us a child is born, to us a son is given. And this gift of God's Son has been given in order to save people from sin, to save people from the punishment that sin deserves. We can't do that ourselves. We can't save ourselves. So God has given his Son as a gift to provide salvation. Earlier on in the same passage, it was read to us earlier, the gift is spoken of in this way. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of the shadow of death, a light has dawned. Imagine being in a place of great darkness with no electricity, And then somebody gives you a gift, the gift of a torch, the gift of a light. And what a precious gift that is, the gift of light when you're in the darkness. And in our sin against God, we're in a state of darkness. And if that continues, we'll remain in darkness throughout our lives and beyond death and into eternity. Jesus himself once described eternity without God, under his punishment, as being in outer darkness. Yet God the Son was given to the world as a light, to bring people out of the darkness of sin and its punishment, to bring people into the light of God. Jesus once spoke of his coming into the world in this very way. He said, "I have come into the world as a light, so that no one who believes in me should stay in darkness." That there's no reason for any of you to stay in darkness, to stay in the darkness of sin and separation from God, because Jesus Christ, God's Son, has been given as a gift to bring light, to bring people into the light. A child is born, a son is given. But there's a third thing in this Christmas promise for us to notice, and it's this: that he's born and given to us. Twice in these few words we are told that. For to us a child is born. To us a son is given. Now who is the us being referred to in this verse? Well, in the first instance, in the first place, it was the prophet Isaiah and the people he preached to in and around Jerusalem some 2,700 years ago. Isaiah was preaching to people at that time, and he said to those who listened to him, to us a child is born, to us a son is given, that this promise is made to us. And Isaiah could say to those people all those years ago that a child was coming to save people from sin and make them right with God. And if Isaiah and those he spoke to turned from their sin and believed the promise and put their trust in the one to come, then they would be saved from the darkness and enjoy the light of God. But the promise is bigger than that. The promise is for more people than that. It wasn't just for the Jews who lived in Jerusalem in Isaiah's day. But it was a promise for people living in Jerusalem, in Israel. It was a promise for the Jewish people at all times. All through the Old Testament scriptures, that the same promise is made again and again to the Jewish people. It wasn't always made as directly as it's made here, but it was always made that one day a child would come, one day a son would be given who would save people from sin and make them right with God. And if any of them at any time turned from their sin and believed the promise and trusted in the one to come, they would be saved from the darkness and enjoy the light of God. But then the promise is bigger than that. The promise is for more people than that. Later on in this same book, the book of Isaiah, God speaks to Jesus Christ, his son, the one who was born, the one who was given. And listen to what God the Father says to his son, Jesus Christ, in chapter 49 and verse 6. He says, "It's too small a thing for you to be my servant to restore the tribes of Jacob and bring back those of Israel I have kept. I will also make you a light for the Gentiles, that you may bring my salvation to the ends of the earth." Imagine a a grandma dishing up Christmas dinner and saying to her teenage grandson, that's not enough for you. You need to have more. And he empties his plate and she says, oh, you haven't had enough. You need to have more. And she keeps on giving him more. Well, God says to his son, Jesus Christ, it's not enough. It's not enough for you just to save Jewish people. You need more than that. You're going to save people from all over the world. You're going to be a light to people all over the world at all times in history. This promise, to us a child is born, to us a son is given, is a promise that's made to all people in all places. It's a promise for you. It's a promise for me. It's a promise for all of us. That a child has been born, a son has been given, who saves people from sin and the punishment it deserves, who makes people right with God, who died on the cross to do that. And the promise is made that if you admit and turn from your sin and believe the promise and put your trust in Jesus Christ, then you will be saved from the darkness and enjoy the light of God. To us a child is born, to us a son is given. Will you receive this gift, this glorious gift of God?